This is KLEAN Radio.
Welcome, everybody out there listening to KLEAN Radio. We have a great show tonight. I'm in the studio with my co-host with the most, Andrew Spanswick.
How's it going, Judah?
It's going great. Who's been in the industry for over 22 years.
I think it's probably growing by now.
It's 23 years, we'll say.
Getting older every day.
Could pretty much answer every question, and if he can't, he'll still answer it. But that's Andrew Spanswick. Also, I'd like to welcome everybody. There's a great opportunity for you to get any questions about addiction recovery answered, whether it's for you or someone you care about. And if anybody's interested in going to our past shows, go to KLEANradio.com or go to Facebook.com/KLEANradio, and we have some amazing past shows. It's really amazing, Andrew.
Glad it's amazing.
Yes, I decided to use the word amazing a lot
as many times as possible.
As many times as possible. But there's something I really wanted to talk about, and this is really becoming a national story. Growing up, I was a huge boxing fan. I was a huge sports fan, and I grew up idolizing Mike Tyson. I remember, they had the video game on Nintendo, and I could never beat Mike Tyson.
Now you're aging yourself.
They had the Will Smith song, and he really was a hero till that night in 1991 when he lost to Buster Douglas, and he's had a fall from grace. Of one of the greatest American athletes I've ever seen, a 21-year fall from grace. And last week on NBC's on Fight Night, he had on ESPN's Fight Night, he had an amazing blurb that I'd like to play for you.
I haven't took drugs in 6 days, and for me that's a miracle. I've been lying to everybody else and think I was sober, but I'm not. This is my 6th day. I'm never going to use again.
And, a couple years ago I met him, and I know you did too, Andrew, and I saw him mopping up after a 12-step meeting. And I remember thinking to myself, that's the champ, that's the champ mopping up after a meeting. If he could mop, anybody could mop. Mm-hmm. And, as he comes out and talks about this stuff, he's the champ to me again. I mean, the courage that this guy took to get on national TV and say that he needs help. How many people out there that are driving right now that are listening at home have secrets that they can't share, that are dying of addiction and alcoholism? And that's Mike Tyson that's hopefully opened up the talk out there.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Tyson isn't your normal individual. He's had a life of that, very few people will live. I feel sad for him, honestly. I feel like it's unfortunate, the troubles that he's had. And obviously, he didn't have the best upbringing. And then he was exploited by a lot of people. People say, hey, Mike Tyson made so much money, he should be fine. But think about how much money people made off of Mike Tyson, he's hopefully he can get clean and sober and, pull his life together. He's trying and he's been struggling with it. But this is one of those things, where people get sober for a little while, as I know Mike did, and as he did. And, then he's fallen off the wagon. And it's when you're in the public profile and you're that exposed, it's really tough to have to come out and admit that you're, drinking again. But the fact that he's sober again and hopefully he can, hang in there, it's great. And to have the humility to come forth and actually talk about it is a special thing.
I sort of think he knew that if he wasn't on, that this was his moment to say it out loud. They say you can't save your face and your butt at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I think he decided to save his butt. And
I think, but the unfortunate thing is like watching all the pundits in the media, out here, they're all talking about, he's crazy and, he's talking about killing people and, and they don't even realize he's speaking metaphorically about himself and about his addiction,
Right.
And, it's just sad. It's sad that everybody has to sensationalize someone's pain and suffering. If he had cancer, you would see a show about, cancer, and then they'd run a special about that type of cancer and about, awareness of cancer and, how to make sure you don't get that type of cancer. But nobody talks about, mental health issues, developmental issues growing up, how to overcome trauma. How to deal with alcoholism and addiction. It's just glossed over like, he was really rich and he's spoiled and he just obviously, doesn't give a, what.
So I'd love to hear from you tonight on this topic. So the number is 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. Are you out there and you're going through the ringer right now And you don't know how to get honest. You don't know how to call somebody up and say, you know what, I'm dying of addiction and I don't know how to get help. And Andrew, we've seen it so many times with people that have been sober, that this is the one of the hardest things when people are sober and they're trying to get it again. They feel shame, they feel judgment, and what we're trying to say to people tonight is don't feel that shame. Don't feel that judgment.
Yeah, exactly. It's not necessary. There's so many positive ways to go that have nothing to do with that stigma and that stigmatization. And I'm getting kind of tired of having to, continually defend people that have mental illness and alcoholism. The fact that people continue to stigmatize these illnesses instead of seeing that there's ways that people can be helped. And sure, drug abuse and drug use certainly has some form of personal responsibility to it, and I wouldn't take that part of the equation out. And so is the responsibility to stay sober. I mean, alcohol's legal, but we still blame the alcoholic, and it's just not the way to go. It doesn't help anybody. Blaming people without offering a solution, it's just so wrong. And that's the way that so many people in our culture view addiction, that we should just blame people without offering them a real way to get help and a way to overcome the problem. And, it's not just the person that's the addict, it's the family members and the community members and the people around you. And it affects everybody. It's like we had this whole thing, it's like, just because you're not an addict doesn't mean you're not affected by an addict or your family isn't. So it's important that we actually get these issues out in the open, talk about them, and start coming up with more effective ways to treat both mental illness and addiction.
Right, because as long as there's that stigma, and we've constantly spoken about this, we constantly say, why is there no mental health awareness month, especially in the NFL, especially in sports where we've had tons of problems with this stuff. What is the fight?
Well, that's the other thing that kind of bothers me. We think that it's the only times you really hear about it is when somebody gets a DUI that's in the NFL or, a famous athlete or a famous actor, and the drug overdoses. The fact of the matter is that, this is happening all over the place all the time. And I guess it's more sensational, and people like the titillation of talking about a famous person versus just talking about ordinary people, but the stats are staggering. I mean, the amount of problems we have with mental illness and we have with drug addiction in this country are overwhelming. We have twice as many people with schizophrenia as we have with Alzheimer's disease. And most schizophrenics are abandoned by the state government. They're dependent on Social Security disability, which for all you taxpayers out there that think you're getting ripped off, it's only $900 a month that these people live on, or less, depending on where they live. And they have a chronic, incurable disease where they can't think properly. And we just leave them on the street getting $900 a month. And we think that that's an effective way to handle and deal with, people in our society. And that we can, as a society, we should be ashamed looking back at ourselves and thinking that, hey, you know what? This is the way we treat our citizens. It's just, and this is a disease that comes on when they're 20 and then they have it for 6 years. It's really upsetting.
And, to anybody out there who's listening, I know it's hard to have sympathy for somebody like Mike Tyson, but, let's think about it like this. I don't think when he was 21 years old on top of the world, his plan was, let me lose everything. Let me almost die of a fatal illness, which is alcoholism. This wasn't in the plan of his.
Well, he has an incredible talent, and to take advantage of that talent, I think he was raised to be, like you said, a killer. I mean, that was his. They groomed him to take advantage of his skills, and that's what boxers are. I mean, let's face it, it's a very violent sport. And, he was the best in the world at it, as far as I'm concerned.
The greatest.
Not necessarily the classiest. I think you got to give that to Muhammad Ali, but why don't we take a call?
But let me just give out the call number again. The number here is 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. We're talking about Mike Tyson tonight, but more importantly, we're talking about the people out there that are struggling with addiction, that are struggling with alcoholism, and are scared to call. Give us a call. You know what? We know this is one of the hardest things in the world to do, is to get honest. And the reason I brought up Mike Tyson, and the reason we want to do this tonight, because that's the champ. And he's getting honest, and he's the champ now because he's being honest. So let's go to Jim in Burbank. Welcome to KLEAN Radio, Jim.
Hi. I just had this point I've been wanting to make to somebody. It's not much. Well, it is about addiction secondhand, but it bothered me the way they took Mike Tyson out in that fight against Holyfield. Because the way I saw it, they let Holyfield headbutt Mike Tyson twice. And in the up until the second headbutt, Mike Tyson had the edge. He was taking Holyfield's grinding him down.
Right, Jim.
And they let him headbutt. They let him get headbutt twice, and then Tyson took the matters into his own hands and bit Holyfield's ear, which was a little shocking. And then,
well, it's what we're talking about tonight, Jim. Nobody in their right mind bites somebody's ear.
Well, yeah, except they see. My contention is they do. He was in an arena with no law. He was scheduled to lose that fight, in my opinion. The run up to the fight said Holyfield was scheduled to win it.
Well, Jim, we're not talking about Jim.
You know what? I actually talked to Mike about this, and he talks openly about this whole issue. But the truth of the matter was that Mike admitted openly that he was using Viagra, heroin, cocaine.
He really wanted to get up for the fight.
Using a lot of women of the night and not working out prior to that fight. So whether it was fixed or not, I don't know. But I do know that he was deep in his addiction at that point. So.
And here's the thing again. Look back, Andrew, and here's, you've been, like I said, you've been in the profession so long. If somebody wants to look back on some of these things, and let's be really honest, it's not just Mike Tyson. We could look back on so many people's careers and the actions they did, and then afterwards go, who's shocked? You look at the 21 years since the fall. Since that Buster Douglas loss, and you look at all the things that he's gone through, if that's not mental illness at its finest, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, you don't have to be mentally ill to have problems too.
Right.
I mean, and I think that sometimes we over-stigmatize people that have problems with mental illness, or overdiagnose, I should say, people, that have problems with mental illness when really they just have problems.
Yeah.
There is no Mike Tyson disease, so, he clearly suffered from a lot of issues in his life, and a lot of it had to do with having to deal with fame, and having to deal with a lot of money and not very much education. And, the education he had was to be a boxer, and he was the best in the world at it for a long time. Yeah. But that's all the education he got, and he got taken advantage for that. And that leads a lot of resentment and anger. And I think, the resentment and anger led to him self-medicating because he was confused. He lost his father figure, and, he didn't know how to handle those feelings and emotion. I think that's still going on for him, unfortunately, today.
Let's go to Brian, Brian in West Hollywood. Welcome to KLEAN Radio.
Yes, hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Okay, I guess we're both doing okay.
Yes, I'm actually doing amazing, Brian, because that's the word of the night.
What's your question, Brian?
Well, I listened to you. I'm really not familiar with your program, but I just so happened to tune into this segment, and I heard you talking about a person that's widely known but not well respected, and that was Mike Tyson.
Mm-hmm.
During his career that he did establish, he was not well respected despite the fact that he excelled during segments of his career. He had some major valleys and peaks.
Yes.
And certainly he went through a series of ups and downs where nobody really knew where he was going. He simply was not, in my judgment, the type of person that should be cited as an example of someone who experienced alcoholic problems.
Yeah,
now,
but he did.
But,
I mean, I get what you're saying. There are good people and there are bad people everywhere. But Mike Tyson definitely had a problem with addiction, and and a severe one. And I get what you're saying. I think that you're right that we should never hold up any of these people as role models. Why we hold up sports figures in general as role models? Yeah, I mean, what was it? Charles Barkley said, "I'm not a role model." And then the fortunate thing is that we've created a system and society with sports where the integrity of the sport has been lost to free agency in baseball. It's all about money. Nobody cares. You got all these guys running around. So I don't get the point. But the guy's still an addict, and so and he's trying to get sober. And the unfortunate thing, like I said earlier in the show, we're not talking about the thousands, of people in California and other states alone that have a real problem with addiction that really, have a regular, honest, or whatever life. Who's to judge? But because he's Mike Tyson, everybody's talking about it.
But people did try to avoid Mike Tyson. He did not have a particularly well-respected reputation.
See, Jim,
and he was banned from many locations from boxing.
Brian,
because
a lot of that was probably because of his addiction.
Yeah, but Brian, this is where I'll have to disagree with you on a little bit. Just because when I was younger, I was 13 years old. To be honest with you, I didn't know all the stuff that was going on. All I saw was Mike Tyson in the ring. So for me, for somebody that was 13 or 14 years old, he was in our vernacular at that time. He was in songs. He was in video games. He was in front of us on national television. So for guys like me, or women not like me, but for women like for my girlfriend, we didn't care about that stuff. So years later, as we see him go through the struggles that he's going through, it's sort of, for me now he's the true role model.
He's making a comeback to the extent that he's capable of.
Right.
I think he's looking to make amends for the problems and the horrific things that he's done in his life, and he's been very honest about it. That he was a rapist, and that he engaged in a lot of horrific behavior. Yeah. And I think that if he has any hope of living the rest of his life in some sort of positive way and has any hope at redemption, he has to, cleanse himself of those evils, and he's got to get sober.
He's got to make amends, and he actually just started the Mike Tyson Foundation, and he said he wants to make his legacy about helping people.
It will be very interesting to see, given the fact that he's a former boxer and a former athlete, where he goes in terms of direction, how he establishes himself to the public. He's definitely trying to redeem himself.
Brian, we're a show about addiction and recovery, and one of the things we love to talk about on this show is the success people have when they get sober. And I can't think of, this isn't just about Mike Tyson. We're just using him as an example tonight of so many people out there that are struggling.
Well, people shouldn't struggle if they realize that in advance that alcohol is a problem, and if they resist, they won't be involved in the problem.
Right, but Brian, that's a really utopian, beautiful thought. But sadly, it's a great point, Brian. I just want to.
There's lots of types of addiction, and different people get caught up with addiction. But and they get caught up in different ways. Thank you for your call, Brian. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your call. If you just tuned in, you are listening to KLEAN Radio. Give us a call at 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. Andrew, it's interesting because we post these things on Facebook, and we post a lot of questions. And a couple people have said recently, well, if you don't drink, you can't start, and all these different things about how to cure alcoholism. And this isn't on the sheet, but I really wanted to talk about this. New York had to shut down a festival today. It was the third day of the festival because 2 people have died, and 4 people two people died, and 4 people at least were in the hospital because of overdosing on Molly or MDMA. And, tell that to their families, that they just shouldn't have started, picking up the drug. And it's such a simplistic thought sometimes.
Well, and a lot of people start their addiction early in their young adulthood. I mean, most people that become addicted use the ages like 12 to 18 when their frontal lobe isn't fully formed and their judgment isn't really clear, and so and they're out there experimenting, and next thing you know they get hooked. And once somebody's an addict, and once somebody is gotten into the cycle of past abuse and into addiction, it becomes a medical problem, and it becomes not just a medical problem, but a problem for society, a problem for people's families, a problem for, the criminal justice system. And that's what we've done. We've basically said, you know what, we're going to blame everybody because they used once or twice and then they became addicted and it was their fault in the beginning. So let's just make it a criminal justice problem. We're just going to stick everybody in jail. And that's what we're doing. We're just locking everybody up. And I can't think of a worse place to put someone with a drug or a mental health problem than stick them in a prison with no help. There's like one psychiatrist for every 200 plus prisoners in the United States. I mean, it's just crazy.
I got to tell you, you're such a liberal. No, I'm joking around. And the reason I say that and I joke around is because one of the stations that we're on is, many of the stations that we're on, it's an extremely conservative, top-heavy type of format. And if people were to tune in sometimes listening to us, we sound like these, not realizing that in other parts or other aspects of our life, we're very conservative.
Oh, very conservative. Yeah. I actually believe in the original constructs of state and federal constitution.
Right.
Right. I mean, you want to be fundamentalist and radical. Right. That's what I am. And there's a clear mandate that the states are responsible for the people that have mental illness and addiction issues. So, we're offering it on the federal government and expecting Social Security to pick up the bill. We're all getting taxed for this, and then people are ripping off Medi-Cal and with these shoddy rehab centers, and nobody's really looking at the problem professionally and doing a good job.
And so if you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. And one of the things we're talking about tonight is we brought up the Mike Tyson thing because, to me, when I saw him a couple of years ago after a 12-step meeting, mopping up the floor, and he was a little older, a little fatter, a little more out of shape, obviously, I saw the humility in him that he wanted to get help. And he didn't get it right away. And that's what we talk about, too. It's so horrible that when people relapse, this judgment goes on. And we're here to say that if you're struggling, if you're relapsing, no matter what type of crisis you're in, as long as you're not dead, you could get help.
Well, also it's interesting, he got sober on a downward swing, right? And then he was, he was just kind of Mike Tyson and, and was doing well and sober. And then he had this, latest reinvention of himself with his one-man show, and he was in The Hangover, and
he was great in The Hangover,
and
by the way.
But that's when people slip often. People are often that have had problems with addiction. They're as scared of success as they are of failure, and it's the idea that the success they have will get pulled away from them again, and they're going to lose everything. And instead of have it happen to them, they self-sabotage and they relapse and they use.
So before we go to the break, there's one more clip I wanted to play for you from Mike Tyson. We're going to get to a different story in the bottom of the hour, but let's hear it.
I'm a bad guy sometimes, and I did a lot of bad things. I wanted to be forgiven, and so in order for me to be forgiven, I hope they can forgive me. I want to change my life. I want to live a different life now. I want to live my sober life. I don't want to die. I'm on the verge of dying because I'm a vicious alcoholic.
And Andrew, I can't think of a more powerful as far as somebody getting honest than that.
Yeah.
And saying the only way I'm going to get better is by making amends for what I've done and by being honest.
Once again, unfortunately, Mike Tyson is such, in a way it's interesting. He's such a dynamic character, and he frames things in such aggressive stances. Yeah. Obviously, he was raised to talk that way as a boxer and intimidate people. But, to hear him you can tell that he really takes it out on himself.
Yeah.
I mean, most of that's about beating himself up. He's self-destructive because he's an alcoholic.
And that really defines everything he's saying, I think really defines addiction. Beating yourself up, not being, it's
and the shame society puts on you for your addiction, and, you're scared to get help, you're admitting weakness.
And how many people beat themselves up because they think that, it's like you could be married and you feel like if you beat yourself up because you're using your husband or your loved ones won't punish you as much because you're beating yourself up. And it's this vicious cycle where you're not getting better. You're not getting to the cause.
Our society has for a long time worked on a shame-based idea of how to deal with problems in society. We're all about, let's go out there and shame people into behaving properly. Let's use guilt and blame instead of coming up with solutions that are positive and uplifting.
Well, we got to go to break, but we have a great show still running, and give us a call at 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. Discussion continues at KLEAN Radio.
Are you or someone you care about addicted to drugs or alcohol? Addiction ruins lives and destroys families. Bring an end to the pain and suffering by calling KLEAN Treatment Centers. KLEAN has helped people from around the world break free by not only treating the addiction, but the underlying causes and providing vital aftercare so people can get clean and stay clean with no gimmicks and no false promises. If you need immediate assistance or just have questions, call KLEAN Treatment Centers for guidance. A much better life awaits.
Welcome back to KLEAN Radio. So last week at the end of the show, we ended up getting a call from somebody that sounded like Andrew. He was in his mid-70s, and he was trying to get help. And years ago, I was at this 12-step meeting, and I remember this guy. He was about 64 years old, and we were talking, and I was struggling with addiction. I was really young. I was 20. He was 60. And he goes to me, it took me 60 years to get the first step. So it took him, like he was joking, saying, he was 64 years old. It took him 63 years to get a year sober. And I remember thinking to myself, it was so profound, because often when I was getting sober young, I used to hear people say, I spilled more than you drank. And when I was young, I would get jealous of the people that got here when they were older because they had the extra years out there. And then I realized no matter what age you get sober, you're miserable. But, we're finding out more and more. We're seeing people that are older getting sober now or wanting to get sober. And I think sometimes it's hard if you're a little older because you say, what's the point?
Yeah, and I think we're seeing family members, realizing that they need to get help for their loved ones that are older. I just also, there's been such a prolific use of opiate medications for pain. People are living longer. The exercise boom of the baby boom generation has resulted in boomeritis, as they call it, is jokingly in the medical field. But we have all these people that have joint pains, their knees are failing, and from jogging and overdoing it. As Americans, we tend to overdo everything. We don't just do things in moderate proportion. It's a cultural thing in America. You either do it 100% or you do nothing. You sit on the couch, right? So we've had a lot of people now that have chronic pain problems in their lower back and their knees, and from exercising too much. There is such a thing as exercising too much, and so now you got all these people. They go to the doctor, they get opiate pills, and next thing you know, they're strung out, and it's becoming more and more a problem. And we've seen a shift away from illegal drugs to prescription drugs. Right. And it's a quick, easy fix for a doctor to write a script for opiates. In fact, doctors are mandated to treat people with pain with painkillers. They can't just not treat them. They actually, at some level, have to treat them or offer some suggestion of treatment. So it's a sticky point, and there are people that do suffer from chronic pain that need some intervention. But we've obviously gone way overboard. And then there's all these crooked doctors out there. They're running pill mills, and we see them getting busted every now and then.
But don't you think it's got to be really confusing? Because we face this all the time. All of us, you're 40 years old, you've lived a good life, you've managed.
Wish I was 40.
Or you're 50 years old and you lived a good life and you've
yet.
managed. And all of a sudden you wake up one day because you had a back injury, and you wake up going, oh my God, I'm a drug addict.
Well, most people don't really know the pills they're taking.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they get in a traumatic situation or they're in pain, and they go to the doctor and they trust their doctor. They take what they're taking, and then all of a sudden they become addicted, and then they start doing things they never thought they would do, like drinking because the pain pills aren't working enough. And it becomes a downward cycle of self-medication, and then before you know it, they're deep in addiction.
So I'd love to hear from you, because so give us a call. The number is 800-222-5222. The number is 800-222-5222. You're listening to KLEAN Radio. But imagine you're 25 years old and your 50-year-old parent has a drug problem.
I see that a lot, actually. People will come to me and they're actually in their 20s, and the problem is their parents.
Right.
And they're like, what do I do?
It's very bizarre.
Well, it seems bizarre, but there's a lot of situations where the children actually raise the parents.
Right.
Right. We've seen that a lot. Latchkey kids in the 80s, was the big term, and where the parents were out working or abandoning the family, and the kids ended up having to take care of their own parents, and that leads to all sorts of problems down the line. And then often these people become addicts themselves because they tend to replicate what their parents did and try to figure out what the motivation was, or why was it that mom and dad liked to use drugs or drink all the time. Even though it ruined my childhood, I have a question about why they would have choose drugs and alcohol over me as a child. And so unfortunately they end up going out and using themselves and repeating the cycle of addiction.
But it's how many people, and we face this all the time, people go, what's the point? I'm 55, I'm 60 years old, why should I get sober? I mean, I'm done. But the thing is, you might live an extra 40 years these days. So why live those years?
Oh, it's also collateral damage. I might as well use some military terms with what's going on with Sirius. So, it's collateral damage. It's not just yourself that you're affecting when you're using. You're affecting all the people around you, and you're affecting society on the whole. And, I realize that it's tough for people to reach out and get help. And it takes 7 years on average when people really have a really bad problem before they'll pick up the phone and call and say, hey, you know what, I'm done with this. I've hit the bottom. I really need some help. And they reach out, and sometimes they get the right phone call. They call the right people. Sometimes they don't. And that's what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about different types of treatment and how to do this right and give people the right opportunity to get sober.
So if you're out there and you're listening, this is we love talking about this stuff because we've gotten help, we've helped, and we're almost on this show sometimes answering all the phone call, we're talking about all the phone calls we've been getting for years and years and years. And we understand the fears that people have. And so if you are a little fearful and you're a little scared to talk about this, you could always give us a call on our private line. That's 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040. We do understand that this is one of the toughest things to talk about, Andrew. I mean, I can't imagine having to call up. I wouldn't even know sometimes, because thank God my parents don't deal with this stuff. but there are a lot of people out there that are my age, that are younger, that their families are going through this.
Yeah, and there's amazing the amount of people that we've helped, through this radio show, and so, some for free and, through scholarships and, some that have had good insurance and been able to pay. And, it's always great when you see people come out the other side and, they're sober and they're like getting their life together and they start to see all the possibilities for themselves.
It's pretty awesome, actually. The other night on Facebook, somebody messaged me and they said, thank you so much for giving me a scholarship into KLEAN. And she's going to KLEAN Washington and she's a fan of the show. I didn't know that we, we get a lot of these and we want to help everybody, but you can't always.
Well, it took me about 3 months to be able to get an open bed for her. So.
Yeah, it took a while. Let's go to Lee in San Pedro. Welcome to KLEAN Radio, Lee.
Hi.
Hey, Lee, how are you doing? What's going on?
You were talking about prescription medication, and I believe I got quickly addicted to Dilaudid.
Dilaudid, yeah.
And I have acute neck pain.
Mm-hmm.
And wow, I just can't believe how quickly it. Now I have two problems. I have the pain, plus all I want to do is take this medication, and it's not working. I need more and more of it to get. It's the law of diminishing returns.
Well, yeah, you're dealing with. This is very common, where you're dealing with the concept of tolerance, where the more of a drug you take in, your body adjusts to it and builds tolerance, and then it needs more just to get the same beneficial effect of the drug. So,
and then the doctors are kind of angry because they give it to you, and then when you ask for more, then they get mad at you.
Right, and this is part of one of the issues that the medical community is still trying to deal with is they're trying to come up with painkillers that are non-narcotic that are effective.
Nothing really works.
Well, that's true, and that's one of the things that I think people with chronic pain at some point, a lot of them come to realize is that opiates per se as a drug class, like Dilaudid and like oxycodone, don't really work long term, and they don't really get rid of the pain. They just make you feel differently about the pain.
Lee, how long has this been going on?
Well, I've had the pain for 3 years. I have mercury poisoning. I got mercury poisoning from my teeth. It ate up my nerve endings. So anyhow, I've been on it since April, I think. April.
And so since April, so what is that, about 7 months you've been, 5 months you've been taking?
Yeah, it's a short period of time. And now I'm not on it right now. I ran out.
And let me ask you another question, Lee. How are you abusing anything else, or it's just the Dilaudid right now?
Well, I didn't take it as prescribed because, one every 6 hours is not enough.
Andrew,
Right.
what do we do for somebody?
I mean,
like
this is a classic example where, Lee, you're in a situation where they give you something that feels like it works for a little while. You can't take it as prescribed because it's not working at the low level that the doctor is allowed to prescribe it to you for. So you end up using it, then running out, and then becoming desperate. And then people will often go to illicit drugs or buying the same drug on the street, just try to get enough. So, I'm certainly not suggesting that you do that. I mean, what I'm suggesting is you actually do the exact opposite. That you.
All I know is it happens so quickly.
Well, tolerance for you're taking an opiate that's very strong,
and everybody's body, has a different reaction.
Well, and this, Dilaudid in particular is a very strong opiate. So, that's one of the,
Lee, is there any chance you could go to another doctor, maybe get another checkup, not another prescription for Dilaudid?
I can go to another doctor, but what do I do about the pain?
Here's the thing. There are other doctors out there that treat things differently.
Well, there's people that specialize in mercury poisoning. Mercury poisoning is a real big problem, and it's, actually in Asia, they only let people eat fish once a week now because of the levels of heavy metal in fish.
From my teeth, my teeth cracked, and the mercury and the fillings went down in my neck and ate up my neck. So I have an ongoing problem that's not going to be solved.
Lee, but here's the thing, without a doubt. We had a guest on our show a couple weeks ago. His name was Dr. Gregory Smith. And if you go to our website, KLEANradio.com, that's clean with a K, his info is up there. He's a pretty amazing doctor. He does, this is one of the things he deals with is people like you that have gone through certain issues. And,
or have certain issues.
And are borderline because, what is one of the things he does? He takes you off the meds to find out.
It's baselining people.
Right.
They'll take you off the medication, stop that problem of addiction, because right now you're probably not addicted. You've probably just been using for a little while. So, you can get off that medication and you'll find alternatives to deal with your chronic pain.
Well, there's really, I've tried, there's really nothing, but it feels like there's an ice pick, sticking me in my neck.
Right.
Yeah. I had a doctor that I used to work with who used to say, until another you should never go to a doctor that hasn't really experienced a bad toothache, because otherwise they don't have the right look of concern. And, it's true. Unless you really understand that level of chronic pain on a daily basis, it's impossible to really sympathize with the client and the patient. But I encourage you to go to that doctor and get some help and
Lee,
another
thank
opinion.
you so much for the call. But again, Andrew,
and the Dilaudid's a dead end.
Yeah.
You can take that for a little while, but if you're just going to end up getting strung out. So
and what amazes me, I gotta say, and she's a perfect example, and we have so many perfect examples, is how many people go to the mechanic. The mechanic says to them, it's $800 to fix your car. Somebody goes, oh my God, that's too much money. I'm gonna go to another mechanic. And the next guy says it's $750. They go, oh my God, it's too much. I'm gonna go to the next mechanic. All of a sudden, somebody's got a problem with their head. They go to the first doctor. The doctor says, this is what it is. I'm gonna give you this, and they say, I'll take it. It's you're dealing with the most sensitive organ in the body. When
you're in chronic pain, there's really nothing you can do until you get that pain relieved, right. And so you become desperate, and you're just desperate for an answer. And we see this with addiction too, where people are at the point in their addiction where they're just absolutely desperate. They bottomed out. They're looking for any kind of insight or help they can get.
Sometimes they take it from the wrong people.
Well, that happens, and we've seen that a lot. There's just been this big, Medi-Cal crisis in California, and then we had this big scandal in the Hollywood Reporter with a rehab here in California, where people were doing treatment that was inadequate and people were dying from it. So it's important that people really look at the track record of a rehab they choose and make sure that they're not going into a place that isn't properly regulated and providing treatment that's really effective.
And if you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. Give us a call. The number is 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. And there are a lot of people out there right now like Lee that had obviously didn't get mercury poisoning, but had busted their knee at the gym, hurt their back. Doctor gave them a few pain meds, and all of a sudden, 6 months, a year and a half later, they're like House. They're just popping Vicodin, like it's candy.
Yeah, except he acted like he was functional. Nobody could take that much medication and be functional. So.
That's right. But, and it's sort of funny, actually, because, as we had a call before saying how that Mike Tyson shouldn't be a role model. I know a lot of people that House, the character like House on TV, was a role model. That we've changed our role models, like, because he's a functioning, he's this brilliant man, but he has a bad anger and he takes pills. That's somehow okay because he's saving lives. And
but it's also fiction.
Yes, which people don't always realize.
Yeah, I mean, if everybody thinks this is real, it's like, I don't know, a single doctor that would even be allowed to practice that's taking that much medication.
And so there are a lot of people out there. Give us a call. You don't have to struggle anymore. And I'm saying this because, and Andrew is saying this to you as people that have gone through the struggle themselves, the people that have fought this. And, we talk about afterwards, I can't say who they are, but we have a couple of great, audience members in the studio tonight, and because of anonymity, I have to just say that. But they're amazing, and they're products of KLEAN. They're guys that have, I've watched them come out the other side of addiction, and they're really young, and it's really cool sometimes to see the success stories. And I don't think often enough on TV in any of these places we see the success stories.
Yeah, it's generally not as exciting. I mean, and there are shows that sort of show the benefits of treatment, like Intervention, but there's also exploitive shows where they just feed into the drama and chaos of it, and we see that all the time. So
I want to get back to the story about what's happening in New York right now, that they had to shut down this concert, because I'm really shocked by this. I'm not shocked. I'm saddened by this story that 2 people overdosed at this thing. 4 people at least are in the hospital because of this MDMA, this Molly. And there really is this permissiveness these days. And we talk about it all the time, the Trader Joe potheads. the whole food, ecstasy takers. These people that think because
I've never heard the term Trader Joe potheads before.
That's my term. I'm coining that. I hope to not get sued for using the term Trader Joe potheads. But they're the people that go exercising and that, think because I exercise, it's okay to do these drugs recreationally. They're so careful about what they put into their system.
Well, I got really criticized on CNN the other day. I was, talking about marijuana and that, it might have triggered James DiMaggio and some of his behavior. And everybody's like, oh, I got all this hate mail from all these pot smokers, and they're like emails. And
it took really slow, though, to write the mail.
Yeah, it took them a couple of days to get it to me. But anyway, but they're going on about, marijuana could never do this. And it's like, really, guys, it's like, if you have a okay brain, and it doesn't, and you're smoking some pot, yeah, okay, for most people it's not going to cause a problem. But if you have a family history of schizophrenia or thought disorder, you're at high risk for, getting triggered into that illness, which is, there's a threshold that you can hit. And something like marijuana, especially at the strength levels we see today, is going to push you into that mental illness if you have the genetic predisposition for that illness. And people, don't want to take responsibility for that or understand that this is more complicated than just using a recreational drug. There's some people that cannot take it. There's some people that can't smoke pot. There's some
couldn't take it.
There's some people that
paranoid.
There's some people that can drink alcohol.
Yeah.
They have one drink and they become alcoholics right away. They have a genetic predisposition and they're just off to the races. And
I asked you not to always talk about my story every week. If you just tuned in, you are listening to KLEAN Radio. Give us a call at 800.
Dude, I thought all you wanted to do was have me talk about you.
Just not on air.
Okay.
And it's 800-222-5222. Let's go to William in Los Angeles. Welcome to KLEAN Radio, William.
How you doing, guys, today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I just thought I was listening to some of the calls. I am currently taking Norco and Zoma for my back pain. I had a work injury in '91. I fell off a 3-story building, and I've had 7 back surgeries, a knee surgery, and an ankle surgery.
Wow.
I have a herniated disc at L4-5. They implanted a spinal cord stimulator to help reduce the pain. But it doesn't eliminate the pain that's still there. And I was originally taking Vicodin for years, and I finally at some point asked them to reduce it because it was just too strong. I couldn't function properly with it.
Right. Well, Vicodin and Norco are basically the same drug, except one has acetaminophen and one doesn't. But they might have lowered the dose as well.
Yeah, exactly. They lowered the dose from the 1,000 milligrams to the 500.
Right.
Which I take twice a day, one in the morning and one in the evening. And now, when I have a bad day, I'll take two more. Morning, afternoon, midday, and then evening. If it's bad enough where I can barely move, but I'm not a big pain pill taker. I've learned to. Obviously since '91, I've learned to live with the pain as opposed to relying on the medication.
You know what? I think you're a great example of someone who understands that these pills can become very addictive, and there is a place for the use of these drugs within the landscape of treating chronic pain. But it's like something that you need to reserve for the times when it's really, really bad. Unfortunately, you've suffered some terrible injuries, and because of these injuries, you're in a position where you're going to have chronic pain. You're disabled, unfortunately. So medication becomes a tool that you can use if you use it sparingly to give yourself days to get through when it's really bad. But if you just use it like our last caller, not taking it as prescribed and thinking it's going to be this magical answer, if you can just get enough of it, then you're going to find yourself addicted and strung out. So
there is no magical answer. It's
right.
Your body's damaged. If it's damaged in a certain way, you're going to live with pain, and you just have to. And you can. Your body can build up a tolerance for that pain. You can learn to live with it to a certain degree.
William, I think your call is really inspirational, and I really. I think it's a great message for people, and we're not anti-drug, right? We're not anti-medication. We think that there's the proper use for certain substances, and even marijuana, I think there's obviously some cases where it's something that should be used properly, and even recreationally to some degree. I mean, I've come on the air before and said I'm not against the legalization. You're not high. I'm not against the legalization of marijuana. I think we should legalize it, and I think we should regulate it. What I'd like to see is that people know what they're getting. I mean, right now you go and you don't really know. So
that's exactly right. William, listen, keep up the good fight, man, and
Thank you.
Good luck.
Yep.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And, if you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. I love what you just said, Andrew, that we're not these people that are saying, pills are bad. And, we're very grateful for modern day medicine. And we're but sometimes not everybody's like William that could take it as prescribed.
It's like alcohol, I mean, alcohol is one of the most dangerous drugs out there. I mean, you go into any emergency room on the weekend and it reeks of alcohol. It just reeks of alcohol. Most of the patients in there are there on some alcohol-related problem, whether it be an accident or whether it be, that's one thing Sanjay Gupta was saying on CNN that he couldn't find any deaths related to marijuana. And I was talking to him in the green room in New York, and I'm like, Sanjay, what about accidents? Did you look up accidents? And he's like, oh, there's no data on that. I'm like, well, I wonder how many people have gotten in a car accident high on weed.
And what's really funny is they have named the weed after Sanjay Gupta.
Yeah, he's got his new strain.
They actually have
Gupta
a strain of weed
Kush.
called the Sanjay Gupta. And I know people are listening and laughing, but it's not like the Trader Joe pothead comment.
It's pothead humor, right? I mean, what do you expect?
They actually have a Sanjay Gupta pot. But here's an interesting question I have for you. What are some prescription medications that people should be cautious of? You go to the doctor and the doctor says to you, well, I'll give you this. What are some of the things?
I think people should be cautious about all medication, and not just when the doctor prescribes it, but make sure you're getting the right thing when you go to the pharmacy. People make mistakes, and and make sure that you're well enough to read the label. A lot of people are sick, they have a fever, or they're not feeling right, or they're in pain, and they don't actually read the label, or they think they've read it right, and they read it wrong, and they overdose, they take too much. We see these kind of problems all the time. So, don't just rely, if you're in a situation where you're taking any kind of medication, don't just rely on yourself, reach out, get some help from a friend, and make sure you're taking care of yourself properly.
It's actually a really interesting answer, because oftentimes when I go into CVS or whatever drugstore you go into to get your prescription, and they go, they give you that offer to talk to the pharmacist. I always go, nah, I don't need it. Then as I get home, I go, maybe I should have spoken to her. As you're reading the side effects and, you're reading all these things. Like, I had no idea that something
you're a hypochondriac, so that makes it worse.
I should definitely, exactly. And I didn't know that one of the drugs I take until my girlfriend Melissa had mentioned this to me, that I shouldn't eat grapefruit.
Grapefruit actually interferes with a lot they
right. And I thought she was joking.
Right.
And I was like, what are you talking about?
And they don't always get the stickers right. I mean, they have those warning stickers on the bottles, for grapefruit juice, but, it really affects a lot of medications. So.
I was actually very angry.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I can't eat grapefruit.
Well, alcohol basically destroys the effect of antibiotics, and it makes it much harder to get better. And people don't realize that for the most part either.
So basically what we're saying tonight is question. If you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio, give us a call. We're running out of time, so give us a call at either 800-222-5222 or 888-601-6040. We've talked about a couple things tonight, but one of them that it really is close to my heart is you're never too old to get sober, and you're never too old to get change, because we've had a couple calls from people.
You're also never too young.
You're also never too young, and I think the thing now is there are so many young people that are getting sober, and years ago that was an issue. That you're just 17. What do you know? It's just a phase you're going through. But you don't say that to a 50-year-old. Nobody's going to go, what do you know? It's just a phase you're going through. But you're 50 and you're an addict and you're an alcoholic. It's okay to get help at 50 too. It's okay to get help at 60. And one of the things we talk about, because I hate terms and I hate words, is we often use the word when you're older than 55, geriatric.
Yeah, I don't know why you hate the word geriatric.
I hear the word geriatric and I think this is the end.
It's another Judaism. Pet peeve
but it's about changing the stigma, because here's the thing. If you hear the term geriatric, I'd say I'm done. Okay? Move me to Florida. I don't.
But you know what? That's ageism. And we have that in our culture where people think that people, once they reach a certain age are worthless, instead of having respect for the elderly and understand the wisdom. And as people live longer with better health and with better medication and better medical intervention, there's going to be a lot of baby boomers out there. It's a significant part of our population, and we need to have more respect for the elderly.
So let's just call them baby boomers instead of geriatrics.
Until they're all dead, and then we'll move on to the Generation Xers.
Generation X. It's exactly right.
You're pretty close to that, Judy. You got like 20 years, and you're going to be the baby boomer.
I'm going to be the Generation X.
You'll be the geriatric X.
That's exactly right, geriatric boomer. And I think if you label it,
I love that you get to recoin like the whole English language on the show.
You know what? Why not?
Yeah.
And I'm all about helping people, and I think people get help if we change the stigma. Instead of detox, we call it a mental vacation. And how many people are going to go on a mental vacation instead of go to detox?
If it worked, that's fine with me.
That's right. You change the terms, you change the stigma. And you know what? People did that for years with the Live Strong bracelets. It helped people. It was all of a sudden cancer.
Well, people used to whisper cancer or not be scared to say cancer, and now we have cancer awareness, and it's become. And the same thing should happen with mental health and addiction. I'm hoping. We're too good of a country to be treating our mentally ill and our people with addictions the way we do.
So instead of rehab, instead of mental institution, we call it a head break. Okay,
maybe that sounds a little violent.
No, my head needs a break.
Your head needs a break.
A head sabbatical. I like that a lot better.
Sabbatical is better. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to actually work on this. I'm going to work on the Judah.
We're going to have to expand your dictionary to get your terms
and instead of
correct.
the Judah dance, which everybody could go online and find, they could find the Judah dictionary to getting help. And
but this is what I like about the show. We can have fun and talk about serious subjects. It's like it doesn't always have to be like doom and gloom.
And here's my thing about this: everybody that's listening, whoever's listening, go to Facebook and go to Facebook.com/KLEAN Radio. And go out there. And the question for the week is, and the best three answers for the change in the name of geriatric and the change in the name of mental institution, get some amazing clean swag. And that's a hoodie and a T-shirt, and you'll get that. And I would love it. You know what? Let's have fun with this. Let's change the name. Because we're always talking about changing the face, Andrew. It's also sometimes you got to, and we have changed the face of who we look at as alcoholics.
Well, we lost our civil rights to the Patriot Act, so go figure.
That's it's very political as we're running out of time on one of our local stations. So I want to see you go on that. I want to see you go on Facebook and let's change the names. I want to thank everybody that helps put the show together. I want to thank Steve over there. I want to thank Rand. I want to thank Patrick. I want to thank Maisa, and I got your name correctly. And I want to thank all our fans out there, Andrew. We have some amazing fans, but when I say fan, we also have so many people out there that it's so cool listening to their posts about people getting help.
Yeah, I think the discussions on Facebook, KLEANradio.com, and on Facebook /KLEAN Radio, there's some really interesting stuff going on there, and it's nice sometimes during the day just flip through there and see what people are talking about, and
to see where that the message is out there.
We're out of time. Yeah. How does this happen so fast?
We're going on a mental sabbatical, and I want to thank everybody. Really, we have the greatest fans out there. I want to just, if you're going through it right now and you're scared, give us a call, 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040.
And have a good week, and we'll see you next Sunday.
And have a safe Labor Day. Misfortune Radio's next. Discussion continues at KLEANradio.com.
Are you or someone you care about addicted to drugs or alcohol? Addiction ruins lives and destroys families. Bring an end to the pain and suffering by calling KLEAN Treatment Centers. KLEAN has helped people from around the world break free by not only treating the addiction, but the underlying causes and providing vital aftercare so people can get clean and stay clean with no gimmicks and no false promises. If you need immediate assistance or just have questions, call KLEAN Treatment Centers for guidance. A much better life awaits.